Republicans are starting to sound like they really pumped for 2010, as if they're really definitely about to win a ton of seats back in the House and the Senate. They want to reverse their status as not just the minority party, but as the very small minority party like they are now. One of the biggest, brightest symbols of the GOP's hopes and dreams and cockiness for 2010 is the fact that they're trying to unseat the top Democrat in the Senate, the majority leader of the Senate, Democrat Harry Reid of Nevada. They want a Nevada Republican to replace Harry Reid. Good luck and all that. But it should be noted that Republican politics in Nevada right now are very awkward. Here's an example of why. The biggest name Republican currently running in the primary for the chance to beat Senator Harry Reid is named Sue Lowden. She's the former chair of the Republican Party in Nevada. And Sue Lowden has now gone on record, including today on the Las Vegas news show Face to Face with John Ralston. She's gone on record saying how much she supports Senator John Ensign. Yeah. You may recall that Senator Ensign's sex with a married staffer scandal just got a lot more serious late last week when the New York Times reported that Ensign allegedly helped his mistress's husband get a job as a lobbyist. The mistress's husband was himself a former staffer in Ensign's Senate office. And after helping him get the lobbyist job, Senator Ensign reportedly then encouraged Mr. Hampton, the mistress's husband, to lobby Ensign's own office. In other words, the allegation is that John Ensign got his mistress's husband a job lobbying John Ensign. Now, in the wake of those revelations, Senator Barbara Boxer, the chair of the Senate Ethics Committee, has said that a preliminary investigation of Senator Ensign has been opened in the Senate. Senator Ensign's own hometown newspaper has also called on the Federal Election Commission to investigate, saying in a Sunday editorial, quote, "We're losing hope that Ensign will ever open up to Nevadans about this embarrassing episode, but it's not too late for his Senate colleagues and the FEC to seek the truth." And then there's the possibility that the Justice Department would launch its own investigation, which would be a criminal investigation. What's the legal risk for Senator Ensign? Well, in order to explain that, allow me to introduce you to Bob Ney. Bob Ney used to be a congressman from Ohio. Then Bob Ney got caught up in the Jack Abramoff scandal, and he went to prison. And one of the things that Bob Ney pled guilty to and went to prison for was conspiracy. Part of that conspiracy was Bob Ney, see if you can follow this now, encouraging his chief of staff turned lobbyist to lobby him, Bob Ney, right after his former chief of staff left Bob Ney's office. That is precisely what Doug Hampton says John Ensign did for him. And that accusation is not hearsay. Doug Hampton was there for what actually happened. So, 2010... rock on. If Republicans want to hitch John Ensign to their beat Harry Reid wagon, we're going to suggest this campaign ad.
Nevada, you know John Ensign. You know the kinds of choices he makes. The choice to have an affair with a member of his staff who was married to another of his employees. The choice to funnel that staffer $96,000 for reasons that aren't exactly clear. The choice to get the husband of the woman he was stripping a lobbying job. The choice not to tell the truth about it until he absolutely had to, and even then. When Sue Lowden had to choose whether or not to have John Ensign's support for her Senate run, she chose yes. Sue Lowden for Senate. Because Nevada needs good decision makers now more than ever. This ad is completely made up by The Rachel Maddow Show and is for satirical purposes only.
Joining us now is John Ralston, a columnist for the Las Vegas Sun and host of Face to Face with John Ralston. John, thanks very much for coming on the show tonight.
Thanks, Rachel. Love that ad.
I know. If anybody wants to borrow it, they're allowed. I'll just say that right now. I know that you really pressed Sue Lowden on this issue today. You lined up her support for Senator Ensign right next to all of Senator Ensign's transgressions. She's still holding her ground, saying she supports him. Do you get any sense of why she is supporting him?
Well, I mean, they keep saying it's a personal issue, which, of course, it's well beyond that at this point, Rachel. In fact, that's what Harry Reid's saying, too, and at some point they're going to have to get off that. But I have to believe Sue Lowden's campaign believes that in a crowded Republican primary, it would not be a good thing to distance herself from John Ensign. I think that's just crazy logic. First of all, Ensign's hemorrhaging in some Republican quarters here. Sure, they love what he did on the health care bill, but a lot of people here are very offended by his behavior here whether they're Republicans, Independents, or Democrats. And I think it's a short-term potential gain, maybe not, for Sue Lowden that she's going to really be hurt by with ads just like we saw on the Rachel Maddow show in the general election.
I wonder, John, thinking about Harry Reid and with Harry Reid and John Ensign being the state's two senators, and in a lot of states where the two senators are from two different parties, they do have sort of a mutual non-aggression pact. They agree not to go after each other, and there's obvious reasons and incentives why they do that. But with Harry Reid being the majority leader, I wonder if that has something to do with why Senator Ensign really hasn't been held accountable at all. If that's seen as, if Harry Reid is seen as essentially being insulation for John Ensign in terms of how much trouble he's going to get in the Senate.
Yeah, and I don't know how much longer that's going to last, because there's one thing I know about Harry Reid, having covered him since 1986. He will do whatever he needs to win. And even though he and John Ensign do have that non-aggression pact, you know, Ensign almost beat Reid in 1998, and since then they've become friends. And I think they are actually personal friends. But with Harry Reid, if this becomes a very tough race against Sue Lowden or whoever else gets the Republican nomination, Rachel, it'll be scorched earth. And he will use whatever he needs to use, including John Ensign's transgressions, assuming John Ensign, by the way, is still there in 2010, to hurt the Republican nominee.
In terms of Ensign's future, is there pressure for him to resign? I mean, you've been covering this scandal since the very beginning, since it first broke. He hasn't been in great political shape since he came clean about the affair. But this new reporting from the New York Times, it sort of seems like it's crossed the Rubicon a little bit. He does seem to be in legal trouble now, too. How serious do you see these new allegations?
Yeah, I think they're very, very serious. I think that there had been essentially kind of a quiet period until the New York Times did that. And what they have done is they filled in a lot of blanks with a lot of documents to prove a lot of what Doug Hampton said was true. We knew some of this information before, but not all of it. And I think when you have a national newspaper like the New York Times devote a page-one story and all those words to this, then you have Barbara Boxer feeling that she needs to say something, which she did, the chairwoman of the Ethics Committee. You have the Justice Department, because, as you mentioned, Doug Hampton is essentially saying John Ensign and I broke the law. Now, they're going to have to prove that, and it's very bizarre, I think you'd agree, Rachel, that Doug Hampton is essentially saying, I'm guilty, take me, but take John Ensign too.
Yeah, man, don't underestimate people's anger and desire for revenge in a situation like this. That's what I feel like I'm learning here. John Ralston, columnist for the Las Vegas Sun and the host of Face to Face with John Ralston in Vegas. Thanks so much for joining us tonight, John.
Thanks, Rachel.